Hey guys, my name is Jonathan and welcome back to the Sandbox Engine video series. In this in this video, we're going to go over the input widget. You saw it in the last video at the most basic level, but we'll show you some more things you can do with it. We'll also go over a little bit more about the app registry and some of the other app types you saw there other than PyApp. But to start off with, alright, so we're starting off with some of the basic code you need, similar to the previous app where we created just a basic input this way. But there are some optional keyworded arguments that you can provide to this function that will get you a little bit more out of this widget. So for example, and I'm going to put these on a different line, you have unit. If you wanted to add a unit like maybe feet, you could do that, and you'll see what that does in a second. You also can add a default value. So let's say we want to add 123. And actually, let's go ahead and see how that looks so far. So you can see unit gets added to the end, and you get a default value like that. We also have tip. So I'm going to create a tip. I'm a tip. And what that does is changes, or it adds a tooltip to that widget. So if you hover over it, you'll see the tooltip pop up. We also have, let's see, numbers equals false. Now, by default, you can only type numbers into the input widget, but if you would like to be able to type letters or something like that, you would actually set this keyword argument equal to false. So, and now I can type whatever I want. Okay. We also have label. And what that does is changes the label, but it doesn't change what the input is referred to inside the engine. It's still input 1, however you've just changed the label. And that becomes more useful when you're dealing with dynamic inputs and things like that we'll cover in a later video. But it's also useful if maybe you're wanting to provide a Unicode label for a symbol, maybe the degree symbol, something like that, and you don't want to refer to your input as some Unicode characters with, things like this. You'd rather, still refer to it as input 1, but change the label to whatever you want it to be. There's a few others, ID and location and things like that we'll cover in a later video once we actually get into some of the dynamic inputs. But for now, that's the basics of the AddInput function. Now, it's also important that when adding widgets, so let me go back to the basics of this. When adding widgets, the order of them is that you call them in the constructor is the order that they'll show up in the app. So if I create 3 like this, and I run the app, you get basically the same order that you have in here. Now that's true for all widgets, not just input widgets. And you can actually add a space if you do this, add input space. And what that does is adds a space. Simple, easy, single line to do whatever it is you want to do. Now, aside from location and the dynamic ID keyword, that's really all there is to inputs. So next we're going to, as I promised, explain some of the other app types that you may have seen in the app registry. So if you go to the app registry and say we want to add another app to miscellaneous, you'll notice that you have add PyApp, add app, add TK app, and add table. Add PyApp are apps made using our engine. You saw in the last video how to add those. You also have add app, which are built-in apps that can't be created with our engine that we've provided. For example, I already have an example running. The periodic table. We also have add TK app, which can be a little confusing compared to the PyApp, but it's a pure Python app, meaning an app you created using, maybe Tkinter or whatever library you chose, but it's just not using our engine. It can even be just a Python script that does something. Finally, there's also add table, but that will be depreciated. That's an old app type that we're not using anymore. And the rest of these, add menu, move up and down, things like that. Pretty self-explanatory. And when you're done, you would click Finish. So that's really all there is to inputs and entry boxes. There's a little bit more when you're dealing with dynamic inputs, which we'll get to, but we haven't got there yet. But that's really it. And you'll see on a lot of these widgets that are currently in the engine that most of these keyword arguments and things you can do with them are pretty similar. You can change the label, you can change the default values, things like that. So in some of these later videos, we'll probably cover more than one widget per video. But that's it for this video, and if you like it, please like it, leave us a comment, and we'll see you next time.